This video is going to review solving quadratic equations by factoring. So if we're wanting to solve, then we're wanting to find when the y value equals 0. So you have this set equal to 0. And then if there's a GCF that you can factor out, you do that first. In this case, there is not. This is a trinomial. So you do what multiplies to AC. A is 1, C is negative 20. 1 times negative 20 is negative 20. And what adds to b, which b is negative 8. Remember, a is the number in front of x squared, b is the number in front of x, c is the constant. So you find the two numbers that multiply to negative 20 and add to 8. That is going to be negative 10 and 2. Because this is the easy kind of factoring, you can go ahead and you can rewrite it as x minus 10 times x plus 2. It's minus 10 because it was negative 10, and it is plus 2 because it was positive 2. Then you set each factor equal to 0 and you solve. So you get x equals 10 and x equals negative 2. And so these are your solutions, and you put it right there. All right, on number 2, it is also a trinomial. So we set it equal to 0. This does look like a GCF factors. I think 3 comes out of everything. So I'm going to pull a 3 out of everything. You can absolutely use your calculator to do 72 divided by 3. That's 24. So then I'm going to factor. It does turn back into the easier kind of factoring where you don't even have to use the box because you see that's just x squared. So it needs to multiply to AC, which A is 1 in front of x squared, C is negative 24. So it's got to multiply to negative 24. It has to add to the B value. B is 5. So that would be 8 and negative 3. So you're going to do x plus 8 and x minus 3. And those are your factors. You set each one equal to 0. And so you're going to get negative 8 and you're going to get positive 3. On number 3, x squared minus 144, that is difference of squares. So you're going to square root the x squared, you get x. You're going to square root the 144, you get 12. And then 1 is plus and 1 is minus. And when you set each of those factors equal to 0, you're going to get 12 and negative 12. All right, on number 4, that is a binomial, 2 terms. It looks to me like there's a GCF. So let's pull out a 3x. So it's like you're undistributing a 3x. That would leave x minus 4. So that is factored. You set 3x equal to 0 and x minus 4 equal to 0. So when you divide by 3, you get 0. And when you add the 4, you get x equals 4. And those are your two solutions. Let's go ahead and work on solving by graphing now. So where the solutions are when you're solving by graphing is there where the x-intercepts are. So you just look at where the graph crosses the x-axis, and so you get negative 4 and you get negative 2. And those are your solutions. On number 6, the graph will never cross the x-axis, so that is no real solution. On number 7, the vertex is on the x-axis, so it has one x-intercept. So this one only has one solution, which is x equals 1. Okay, now let's talk about solving by square roots. So if we want to solve by square roots, we need to have either x squared and no x or parentheses squared. So first we're going to get x squared by itself, so we add the 49. So I get x squared equals 49. And then I square root both sides. And when you square root both sides, that's when you get a plus and a minus. The square root of 49 is 7 and negative 7. And you can write it like plus minus 7, or you can write out 7 and negative 7. So on number 9, let's get x squared by itself. We're going to add the 72 first. So we have 2x squared equals 72. And now we're going to divide by 2. And so now I have x squared equals 36. Now that x squared is by itself, square root both sides. And when you square root both sides, that's when you get a plus minus. The square root of 36 is 6. Okay, on number 10, you can see we have a parentheses squared. So let's go ahead and have the parentheses squared by itself, so you square root both sides. When you square root both sides, this is when you get two answers. So right here is when you get 6 and negative 6. So you set x minus 2 equal to 6 and x minus 2 equal to negative 6. Then you add the 2 over, and you get negative 4 and 8. All right, on 11, it's just x squared, so get x squared by itself before you square root. So first I'm going to subtract the 6. Then I'm going to divide by 2. So I get x squared equals 4. Now I square root both sides. And remember, when you square root both sides, that's when you get the 2 answers. The square root of 4 is 2 and negative 2. All right, next we're going to do completing the square. This one I can tell is good for completing the square because the a value is 1 and the b value is even. So I'm going to use a box, just like we had multiplied and factored with. I'm going to put x squared here. I'm going to take the minus 2x and divide it into 2 equal parts, so it's minus 1x minus 1x. That's still x squared minus 2x. I just broke it in half. So to find the number that completes the square, we take negative 1 times negative 1. We get positive 1. So that's the number that completes the square, and you have to put it on both sides so it stays balanced. So on the right side, this is 4. On the left side, this factors to x minus 1 times x minus 1, which is x minus 1 squared. So from there, you can finish solving using square roots, which we just reviewed. So we get x minus 1 equals, the square root of 4 is 2, and x minus 1 equals negative 2. So you add the 1 over and you get 3, and then you add the 1 over on this one, and you get negative 1. Let's try another like that. So on 13, I want to get the c value away because I want to be able to choose my own. So I'm going to subtract the 15 so it moves to the other side. So let's find the number that completes the square. So I put x squared here. I take the minus 8x, I divide it by 2, so I get negative 4x and negative 4x. That's x minus 4, x minus 4. To find the number that completes the square, I'm going to take negative 4 times negative 4. That's positive 16. So I put a plus 16 on both sides to keep it balanced. On the right side, negative 15 plus 16 is 1. On the left side, this factors to x minus 4 times x minus 4, which is x minus 4 squared. Now you're ready to finish solving using square roots. So you square root both sides. So that gets you x minus 4 equals the square root of 1 is 1, and x minus 4 equals negative 1, because that's the point where you get 2 solutions. So you add 4, and that gives you 5 and 3. All right, on 14, remember we need to get that 21 out of the way because I want to choose my own number. So I'm going to add the 21 to the other side. 0 plus 21 is just 21. So we use our box to find the number that completes the square. And so we have x plus 2, x plus 2. And so the number that completes the square, you take 2 times 2, and that gives you 4. So the number that completes the square is a positive 4, and you put it on both sides to keep it balanced. So on the right side, 21 plus 4 is 25. And on the left side, that factors to x plus 2 times x plus 2, which is x plus 2 squared. All right, you square root both sides. And so you get x plus 2 equals 5, and x plus 2 equals negative 5. And then subtract your 2, and you're going to get 3 and negative 7. Okay, here's our quadratic formula. So remember, it must be equal to 0 before you begin. So my a value is 2, my b value is negative 1, and my c value is negative 1. So I do negative b plus minus square root. I always put my b in parentheses and then square it on the outside. That way I never mess it up. Minus 4 times a is 2 times c is negative 1 all over 2 times a. So then how I simplify it is the negative 1 is positive. On the bottom, the 2 times 2 is 4. And then I type in the numbers underneath the square root. That's called the discriminant. I don't type in the square root, just the negative 1 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 1. So that gets me 9. So the square root of 9 is 3. And so I'm going to do 1 plus 3 over 4. That'll be 4 over 4, which is 1. And I'm going to do 1 minus 3 over 4. That'll be negative 2 over 4, which is negative 1/2. All right, so on 16, it's already equal to 0, so you can choose your a, b, and c values. So a is 9, b is negative 6, c is 1. So remember, you're doing negative b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. So I get a 6, because negative 6 is 6. On the bottom, I get 18. I type this piece into my calculator, just the part underneath the square root. Remember, that's called the discriminant. It's a 0. Anytime that number is 0, it means I'm going to have one solution, because if you think about the square root of 0 is 0, if you do 6 plus 0, you get 6 over 18. And if you do 6 minus 0, you still get 6 over 18. So it's the same answer repeated, and that reduces to 1/3. So it only has one solution. All right, on 17, once again, it's already equal to 0. So A is 2, B is -6, C is 5. So I have negative B plus minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. So that gets me a 6, and then on the bottom of 4. And like I said, I'm going to go plug in the discriminant, which is underneath the square root. That's a -4. So because this number is negative and you can't square root a negative, you get no real solutions. All right, and last but not least on 18, you cannot start the quadratic formula yet because it must be equal to 0. So I'm going to add the 6 so that I get 6x squared minus 13x plus 6 equals 0. And then I can start doing negative b plus minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. All right. And so once again, type in the discriminant, the part underneath the square root, which is 25. So the square root of 25 is 5. So if I try 13 plus 5 over 12, that's 18 over 12, which is 3/2. And if I try 13 minus 5 over 12, that's positive 8 over 12. Which is 2/3. It's a very quick review because this was just extra practice in case we need a test retake or to review for our final. So hopefully that helps, but please ask me if you have more questions.